On a Tuesday afternoon, a pale haze drifted into the northeastern United States. By Wednesday, cities like New York were swallowed up entirely, turning day to night under a dense, glowing orange sky. The exposure footprint was massive. Across a stretch from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic, more than 100 million Americans were suddenly placed under hazardous air quality alerts, choking on fine particulate matter. And it created a jarring statistical reality. Clean, modern North American cities completely inverted the environmental maps. Detroit recorded the worst air quality of any major city on Earth, and Toronto briefly sat at the top of the global live rankings, sitting far above the megacities we usually associate with hazardous smog. An acute physical disaster dropped out of the sky onto affluent megacities that had perfectly clean air the week before. For these residents, it was a sudden atmospheric invasion, arriving with the speed of a flash flood rather than a slow environmental shift. The atmospheric spillover quickly turned into a geopolitical dispute. Former U.S. President Donald Trump took to social media, threatening to add the cost of the pollution to any tariffs, claiming the United States was being invaded by filthy air from Canada due to willful negligence. Across the border, Canadian officials were blunt. Ontario's premier told Republicans to stop complaining about the smoke and send help instead. Their domestic emergency services were already pushed past the point of exhaustion. The overwhelming majority of people suffering from this smoke, the ones buying masks and checking hospital capacities, will never actually see a single flame. We are watching a new kind of crisis, defined by a massive geographic disconnect. The fire burns thousands of miles away, seen by almost no one, yet it dictates the health and daily life of distant populations. Every time an event like this happens, the internet fills up with viral claims of coordinated arson campaigns. But the physics are entirely ordinary. This map shows the actual atmospheric setup, a massive heat dome parked over the central United States, combining with an El Niño pattern. Together, they form an engine, pulling moisture straight out of the northern boreal forest and steering the resulting smoke directly south. The volume of ignitions from dry lightning is staggering. At its peak, the Canadian wilderness was seeing nearly one new fire every hour. More than 700 of those fires were officially classified by the government as out of control. That phrase is actually a formal government designation. When hundreds of fires ignite simultaneously across thousands of kilometers of terrain with no roads, no infrastructure, and no water source, firefighting agencies simply do not have the physical means to reach them with a hose or a bulldozer. Crews are forced into strict triage. They defend the fires that immediately threaten human lives and towns, and they let the ones burning in the empty backcountry run completely unchecked because there is no way to stop them. But even with that strategy, the system broke down. More than 33,000 people were forced from their homes across the country. And in Manitoba, 2 civilians were killed, the first time in the province's recent memory that a summer wildfire resulted in residents dying. It got so bad that multiple provinces declared states of emergency and called in the armed forces. The military are not wildfire specialists. The government only deploys them when the civilian firefighting system runs out of capacity, when there are more evacuations than buses, and the ordinary machinery for handling a crisis has collapsed. So when officials say 700 fires are out of control, it is a literal operational reality. Human beings have physically surrendered the landscape to the fire, and the only thing that will stop it is a change in the weather. What that burning landscape releases into the jet stream is a highly specific microscopic villain. The pollutant that matters most in wildfire smoke is particulate matter 2.5. A PM 2.5 particle is 1/30th the width of a human hair. Your body filters large dust, but PM 2.5 slips past, traveling deep into the smallest airways. It crosses directly into the bloodstream, triggering asthma attacks, lung disease, and pushing cardiovascular systems past the edge. And particle for particle, wildfire smoke does more damage than the ordinary urban pollution from cars and industry. The chemistry of burning forests carries compounds that generate more free radicals in the lungs, driving a much more violent inflammatory response. This smoke arriving on top of a summer heat wave traps vulnerable residents in a terrifying paradox. The medical advice for a heat wave is to open the windows and get airflow. The advice for a smoke event is to seal the house shut. An older resident without air conditioning is forced to choose between a stifling sealed apartment or an open window that lets the toxic smoke in. That hazard is no longer confined to North America. If you trace the high-altitude winds on this global map, you can see the dense column of wildfire smoke breaking free of the continent entirely, crossing the Atlantic Ocean and reaching Western Europe. But here is the statistical twist that changes this entire event into a severe warning. By the metric scientists actually use to rank fire seasons, total area burned, this year is officially categorized as a below-average season. In 2023, Canada recorded its worst fire season in history, burning more than triple the acreage we've seen so far this year. The terrifying part is that forecasters are warning the worst stretch of heat and dryness is still scheduled for August. There is a long-term mechanism researchers are watching closely. The northern boreal forest is one of the planet's largest carbon stores. If it burns severely enough, thick layers of ancient peat soil start smoldering, releasing thousands of years of stored carbon into the atmosphere. The forest goes from absorbing carbon to emitting it, driving the very warming that dries out the fuel for the next season. If a statistically below-average season on paper is enough to paralyze a nation's military, trigger international diplomatic disputes, and choke the lungs of people on 2 continents, then our historical metrics for measuring safety are dangerously obsolete. The ceiling for this disaster has not yet been reached. The fuels are primed, the ocean currents are locked in place, and the atmosphere over North America is perfectly set up to accelerate the burn. For a commuter in Philadelphia or Detroit, stepping outside into a sepia-toned street and reaching for a mask feels like a local emergency. But every bit of it is the downstream signature of a forest fire burning 1,000 miles away. Borders, wealth, and distance no longer offer immunity. When the remote wilderness burns, it becomes everyone's immediate breathing problem. The geographic separation of cause and effect has vanished.